Nearly a decade had passed since the original Shantae was released, but thanks to the series creators, a sequel had finally made its way into hands of fans and newcomers alike. Does Shantae Risky's Revenge live up to the expectations of a sequel, or should this one be sent back to the Genie lamp? Church here, and welcome to the Game Grinder. Today we'll be reviewing Shantae Risky's Revenge. Shantae Risky's Revenge was developed by WayForward Technologies, and this time around were able to self-publish themselves. The game was originally released on DSiWare digital distribution service for Nintendo's DS handhelds in October of 2010, and later to iOS, PC, and most recently the PS4. I played the game on the PC via Steam. Much like the original Shantae released for the Game Boy Color in 2002, the sequel faced challenges finding a publisher. The sequel was planned for the Game Boy Advance and went into development after the first game was released, but was cancelled after no publisher was found, largely due to a flooded game market. With the DSiWare service, WayForward was able to self-publish and avoid the issues they had faced in the past. Shantae Risky's Revenge continues on the tradition of the original release. Largely, we're getting a similar gameplay experience, but everything has been incredibly refined and improved upon. The only feature I was a little dismayed to find removed was the day-night cycle, but in return we get a difficulty curve that's more finely tuned. The day-night cycle in the first game made exploring more challenging than a majority of the dungeons themselves. The areas during the day tended to reflect the difficulty curve appropriately, challenging us to use what we've learned up to that point, but at night with enemies becoming stronger, it really bent the curve into a sharp spike. Overall, Risky's Revenge was much easier, but still presented some challenge along the way, and I've had plenty of warm-up with the original. Death in the sequel is handled differently than the original. Instead of the lives-based system, Risky's Revenge takes on an interesting spin on failure. When we lose all of our hearts, we die and restart at the last save location. This might sound a bit harsh, but there are more save spots in the sequel than the original, so if death was to occur, it doesn't take a ton of time to get back to where we were. Another change that makes this less painful is with the Bottomless Pits. Instead of death, we lose a heart of health and restart at the last area transition, but all progress is kept. Bottomless pits are actually signaled by little mist-like skulls that float up from the hole, and I think this is actually a really awesome inclusion because it eliminates guessing whether it's a pit or not, and adds a little bit more style to the game. Spikes no longer cause instant death, but instead just cost health, and with how the death and health is now handled, I think it was a smart choice. Health potions are more easily attained, and there's really no reason you'd run out of health during normal gameplay, except perhaps at an earlier point in the game. One unfortunate change with all of this is the removal of the bathhouse used to restore health, but again it wasn't really necessary this time around since potions are plentiful. The difficulty curve itself in regards to fighting enemies and platforming is pretty forgiving, and it really makes me appreciate the challenge of the first game compared to this. Plain sloppy will still result in usage of a lot of health potions, but eventually I had enough money to keep a full stock of health potions at all times. The item system has been modified, and more specifically the spell-based items. The same items as the first game return. We have the pike ball that creates a constant shield that causes damage when enemies contact it, and a fireball and lightning cloud that are pretty self-explanatory. The big change is instead of items being exhaustible, we now have a magic meter. When using an item, the magic meter will drain. It will slowly recharge when magic is not used, and we can find small magic potions that will restore magic while on the go. We can also purchase magic potions to restore the meter while on the go. I actually really like this change as I feel it's a lot more accessible to have a rechargeable meter than single-use items. In the first game, I barely used the items, and in this game, I use the pike ball pretty frequently. These items are also upgradable, which increases their power adding enhanced effects. The pike ball is a bit overpowered, and makes a lot of the combat way easier than it probably should have been, but it's still my go-to item. Besides gems continuing to be Sequin Land's primary currency, we may now find magic jams. These jams are used in combination with gems to purchase spell items and upgrades. Jams are found hidden throughout the dungeons and caverns we come across. Hidden caves are back, encouraging the return to previously explored areas for hidden items like heart holders and animal form upgrades. Warp squid children are no longer found and turned in for area warping. As we'll explore, we'll find warp squid statues. Once we speak to the statue, we can then warp from said statue to another that's been awoken. There's no longer a warp dance, and getting around areas is pretty much just as fast, since instead of using a warp dance to go to a specific town, we now warp into the various areas themselves. The only drawback here is we have to return to the statue to warp again, but I think it's a pretty fair balance with many of the other difficulty changes. Another excellent inclusion is that of a very handy-dandy in-game map. It's very helpful to know where we are, or where we're going next. It's really just a convenience and saves time instead of going to the wrong location, which I did quite a bit in the first game. If we forget what we're supposed to be doing, we can return to Shantae's friends for a reminder of what the next objective is. Scuttle Town acts as the game's central hub, and though we may visit other locations like houses or towers, there aren't any other towns in this installment. Again, during our travels through Sequin Land, we'll face a large variety of enemies, with many types returning from the original entry, and a good amount of new creatures to encounter. Mini-bosses have been excluded from dungeons, but instead more large and challenging enemies are spread throughout. Along with the standard fodder, there are a few boss battles at various points during the game, usually capping off a certain dungeon. The dungeons are similar to what we experienced in the first game, being minor mazes with a good blend of minor puzzles to mix things up a bit. Dancing is another mechanic that received a slight change. Previously, we had a dance button that started a repeating dance. Then, using the directionals and the A and B buttons, switched up what dance move Shantae performed, with combos shifting into animal forms. I don't really think it was necessary to simplify this, but we now hold the dance button and then release it after one of the 3 dance moves to shift into the various forms. Besides there being less dance moves, unfortunately there are less creatures to shift into, and as I mentioned before, the warp dances have been removed completely. The monkey form returns, allowing longer jumps and wall climbing. Instead of a slash attack, we now have a bullet move that allows us to shoot from walls. The elephant also returns with its charge move to break obstacles and damage enemies, and may gain a stomp attack that breaks through floors and damages enemies below it. The harpy and tinkerbat are no longer present, but we now have a mermaid form. Risky's Revenge switched areas up from having high heights to explore to depths of water instead, which is a pretty neat switch up, adding in some additional variety to the series. As herself, Shantae can only swim at the surface of water, but with the mermaid she can swim deep below. The mermaid receives a bubble attack that may break obstacles beneath the water, and also damage the vicious fish that reside below. With Shantae Risky's Revenge arriving on the PC gaming platform via Steam, we now have a variety of achievements to earn along the way. If the game is played on the DS, there's an import room that will give bonus gems if other WayForward games are present on the device. As far as I can find, this functionality didn't make it into the PC port of the game. Upon completing the game, we may be rewarded with various ending artwork depending on certain completion criteria such as time and items found, and we can also unlock the magic mode. With Magic Mode, we get an alternate dance costume for Shantae, and all of her conversational portraits reflect the change as well. While wearing the new outfit, magic usage is halved, but damage taken is increased. An interesting tidbit is this costume was retroactively added to the game after a community Kickstarter reward was earned during the Shantae Half Genie Hero fundraiser. I'll be discussing the story next, and we'll be going right into spoiler territory, so if you'd like to skip ahead, go ahead and click on the annotation. Let's move on then. The story begins some undetermined time after the events of the clash with Risky Boots when she had stolen the steam engine and the 4 elemental tablets. Shantae has continued to defend Scuttle Town, and the annual Relics Hunter Expo has arrived. After meeting up with Bolo and retrieving an egg for Sky, they head to meet her Uncle Mimic to show off his recent find. When he cracks open the encased item, he acts slightly flustered to find an oil lamp. As the crew begins to question what the item may be, the ceiling explodes and Risky makes her entrance. She steals the lamp and gets her booty out of there. Shantae chases after Risky and intercepts her at the lighthouse. After a quick battle with the Tinkertub, Shantae is knocked out and Risky escapes once again. Mimic finds Shantae, and the mayor then interrupts and fires Shantae as the town's guardian. Determined to stop Risky either way, Mimic tells her about the seals that are required to use the lamp, and we then begin our quest to stop Risky and learn what the lamp might entail. While exploring Scuttle Town, we'll be able to speak to Bolo and Sky. We'll then head east to meet up with Roddy Tops, and after taking a puppy, she'll then check the web for information about the magic seals. We'll then learn that the 3 seals are in possession of 3 barons, the Squid Baron, the Ammo Baron, and the Hypno Baron. Similar to the last adventure, Shantae will have to visit a series of dungeons, but it's never that simple. Turning the puppy to a chef rewards Shantae with a tasty meal to entice the Squid Baron to allow entrance to the first labyrinth, where she'll eventually face off with the Squid Baron and secure the first seal. After an encounter with Risky, Shantae then heads west to meet up with Bolo, and then heads to the mayor's seaside retreat. The mayor, no longer wanting to deal with the problems involving Scuttle Town, gives Shantae the deed to the town to give to the Ammo Baron. After giving the Ammo Baron the deed, Shantae is made a citizen of the newly founded town, and she's then able to access the battle tower. Completing the trials at the tower, again we'll encounter Risky, who escalates her threat before taking off. Back in the forest, and through a locked door inside a cave, we'll eventually meet Roddy Tops' brothers, who offer to help her gain entrance to the seaside labyrinth as long as she brews some coffee. Finding the necessary supplies in the areas surrounding Scuttle Town, the brothers make good on their word and provide Shantae with a needed explosive to blast open the door to the dungeon. Once the Hypno Baron is defeated and the last seal is found, Risky's nowhere to be seen. Risky leaves a note demanding the seals in return for her uncle, and the Squid Baron appears offering help to gain access to a secret entrance if Shantae finds the missing squid children. Shantae then makes her way to Risky's lair to make the exchange. Roddy Tops and her brother had betrayed Shantae and kidnapped Mimic for Risky, expecting brains as a reward. Rescuing Mimic, Shantae then attempts to stop Risky from getting to the magic lamp, and faces off with the Tinker Tub again, and after the battle we find out what the true purpose of the lamp is. It allows the controller to steal a genie's power and command it as their own. Instead of letting Risky use her powers, Shantae fights her genie half, and destroys it in the process, losing her magic powers in the process. Risky escapes again, and everyone returns back to Scuttle Town. The mayor decides he's going to reclaim the town and rehire Shantae as the guardian. With everyone coming together, it's pointed out that Risky, Roddy Tops, and her brothers are still on the loose. WayForward took Shantae and really turned it up to 11 when it came to the presentation, and my hat goes off to Matt Bozen and the WayForward team. The art style has been vastly improved upon, keeping the pixel art style, but with a lot more refinement and detail. The characters are more lively than ever, and given even more personality thanks to the enhancements in the technology, the personalities, and the story focus. As you've noticed, when in conversation with assorting characters, we get fantastically drawn character portraits. Shantae and Risky are given the most attention with an assortment of different poses and expressions. Another neat inclusion is Shantae now has a different animation when she's severely injured, adding more depth to the design, and giving us a reminder when we're not paying close enough attention to health. There's even more humor in the conversation and events than in the previous game, and I found myself chuckling a few times in particular. I really like the original style of the in-town exploration, but I found the change in the sequel makes the town visits a little bit more seamless. Scuttle Town and the Tangled Forest also add additional layers of areas, using launch pads to move us back and forth between the foreground and background areas. The scenery's gotten a lot of attention as well, and is incredibly well crafted. We have a large variety of different locations to visit just like before, but they all have their own twist, making them completely fresh. There's also a really cool shmup-like segment, adding another unique experience to the game. The various inhabitants of Sequinland, the people and the monsters, haven't been overlooked in enhanced designs and animation as well. Jake Kaufman returns as the composer for the Shantae sequel. I really enjoyed the original soundtrack, but just like everything else in this game, the music was really expanded upon. I love the use of the themes and melodies that carry throughout the entire soundtrack of the series so far. A lot of the music from the first game have high quality remix versions in this game, with a wide assortment of new material, and everything fitting into the themes and atmosphere of the game world and the necessary moods. There's so much depth and creativeness. After hearing the songs while playing, I decided to look up Jake Kaufman to see what else he's worked on besides Shantae, and I was pretty impressed with what I found. Some notable recent soundtracks are Retro City Rampage and Shovel Knight, and a ton of other games, but many I haven't played yet, so I can't really comment on their quality. He also offers many of his soundtracks with a pay what you'd like option to support his music, and I think that's pretty awesome. Just like the previous review, I'm going to mention the fan service again. With the enhanced definition and added character portraits, we're supplied with more skin and jiggle than you can shake a stick at, and I'm not complaining. And really, once again, it's all innocent. There were a couple times where I laughed and gave a giggity to certain actions. I'm especially looking at you on Land Mermaid Movement, Boob Adjust Idle Animation, and Item Found Celebration. I love it. I feel it very necessary to give full credit and props to Matt Bozen and the WayForward team for creating such a fantastic and lively game. There's so much fun and pixel art eye candy oozing from every aspect, and the soundtrack fits it all perfectly. The only real downside of this installment is it's actually shorter and smaller in scale, but not by much, and with all the improvements, it's not even really a complaint. With the accessibility of the original release, it's not entirely necessary to play the first game, but it definitely adds an appreciation to the game's growth in all aspects. It should be pretty apparent at this point that I've pretty much gushed over the art style, animation, gameplay, and soundtrack, and you know it, I think Shantae Risky's Revenge is an absolutely wonderful game, and I'll say it's a definitely must-play for anybody who has interest in a retro-style platformer. Thanks for checking out my review of Shantae Risky's Revenge. What are your thoughts on the game? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked what you've seen or heard, please give the video a like, a share, and subscribe to see future videos. I'm on Facebook and Twitter as well, and I post a lot of other great game-related content there, and links are in the description. Until next time on the Game Grinder.